Picture this. You're working on an awesome track and you've just got the arrangement exactly how you like it, and then you start mixing it, but as you go, suddenly the volume starts creeping up and up and up until it's so hot that you've just got a red block on your master fader. Does that sound like you? Sounds like you need to work on your gain staging. In this video, I'll go over how I set up my mixes to make sure that they never blow out, and it's much simpler than you think. But before I jump in, I hope you'll excuse me while I indulge in a little self-promotion. Have you finished a mix or a home master and looking for a little professional advice to make sure you can get it the best it can sound? Why not head over to holosuitemastering.com/feedback and make use of my low-cost mix and master feedback service. You'll get specific and actionable tips on how to get your mixes to have the most emotional impact. Here's what one happy customer had to say. Okay, so let's talk gain staging. Gain staging, quite simply, is just setting up your mix so that nothing ends up too loud and distorting. This is something that we should do at every stage of the process of making a song, from recording through to mixing all the way to mastering. Now, I'm going to focus on mix gain staging today, but I just wanted to touch on how important it is to make sure that you have your gain staging right all the way back at the recording process, because any unwanted distortion at this point is going to compound as we get through the song. And there's no way to undo what you've done in the recording phase. So make sure you get your levels right at the source. The rule of thumb when you're recording is to get your peaks, i.e. the loudest parts of the signal, to be somewhere between -6 to -12 dB. That gives you lots of headroom to hit a note super hard or something like that. If you'd like more detail on this, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video on that later on. Okay, on to mixing. All right, so before we think about gain staging, my recommendation is to start with a fresh mix. So what you should do, let's say you're working in Ableton as I am here, I would recommend taking all of your arrangements, your composition, everything that you've recorded so far, and bounce each part down into its own multi-track. And then we're going to open them into a new project. So to export everything, all you need to do is go into your project. In Ableton here, I'm going to select all individual tracks. I recommend doing it in WAV. I'm going to choose 32-bit float so that we've got the highest quality we can get. And then all you need to do is press export, and it will export each one of your parts of the mix, including all your effects as well, into a folder that you choose. And then all you need to do is open a new project and drag all those in to the new project. And then you've got a new fresh version of your mix where you can't tweak anything anymore in the way that you could if you still had all the original automation and everything open. So this way it kind of keeps you restricted to just focusing on how everything sits together. So here is my new fresh mix that I've started. The other thing that I've done is I've made a stereo mix down of the original arrangement so that I can use that as a reference when I'm messing with the levels in my mix. So I also recommend getting a copy of that as well. I've turned it off here, so if I need to flick between it, all I need to do is press the solo button, and I can turn it back off to hear the mix, press the solo button again to get back to my stereo mix. All right, so everything's nice and fresh. It's ready to go. Let's have a listen at our levels and have a look how they're peaking in the master bus. Just gonna reset that. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the red. It's not bad. It does seem to be popping over occasionally. I saw it go at +1 just before. Yeah, 1.9. Okay. All right, so we're going into the red. If we were to print that right now, it would distort because we've passed that 0 dB full scale threshold. So what we want to do is set it up so that we won't hit that level anywhere near. So what I'm going to do is aim for about -12 dB. That way we've got plenty of headroom. If something pops up, it should be totally fine. It's ready for mastering. Now, obviously, if we're going to turn things down to -12, it might be quite difficult to hear compared to the original. So let's listen to the mix down, which I've set to -12 already. So it's going to be about what we want it to sound like. So it's obviously significantly quieter now. So the easiest thing to do here is obviously to turn up your headphones or your speakers. But if you don't have any more gain in your headphones or your speakers, there is a quick way to fix that. The easiest thing to do is to add a gain plugin. So in this case, it'll be utility. And I'm going to add about 12 dB of gain. Right, so that'll bring it back up to that 0 dB again. Now, yes, we're hitting that 0 line again, but the difference is when you've finished your mixing, as long as you've kept that level at about 0, you can then just turn it off and you're back down at -12 again. And you've got all that headroom that you can then, turn into the mastering phase. All right, so how do we set our levels to make sure that we get to that -12 dB? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is turn down everything in the mix, all the way to 0. I recommend doing this anyway because it's a good way to kind of refresh your understanding about how everything sits together volume-wise in the mix. So the next question is, where do we start? What's the first thing that we turn up and how do we know? Because that's going to be the reference that everything else is going to be raised against. Now, if you're doing rock music or techno or something that has a beat, it's really easy. You usually just use the kick drum because it's got so much energy, takes up a lot of that headroom. So you want to make sure that you set that right first and everything else comes up around that. But obviously in ambient music, we don't have that. So there are a couple of ways to do it. I like to choose whatever is taking up the most of the mix, if that makes sense. So I might look at a very big, thick pad or something like that. Perhaps this M synth here might be a good one. Yeah, I might use that one. And then all I'm going to do is try and raise that up until we're peaking at about -18 dB. And once I put that at about -18, once I raise everything up around it, it should hopefully give us a cumulative -12 dB. So let's try that out. All right, -18, yeah, looking good. Okay, so now we can start bringing in the other parts. And I can just refer back to my mix here. Because everything was nicely balanced before I put this in here, everything thankfully is going to be settled at around -12 for me, which makes it really easy. So that's why it's good to have your rough mix kind of half done by the time you get to the mixing phase. Saves you a lot of trouble. So if I bring these up again, it's not coming. What are you doing? You're very quiet. Okay, let's keep going. All right, we're sitting at about -10, so I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think I need to worry too much about getting the levels exactly right, just comparing to the mix down. And it's that easy. So now everything's sitting at about -12. Now, the next important thing is to make sure we keep it that way, because don't forget that whenever you use some kind of processing, it's going to increase or decrease the volume. Anytime that you add any kind of processing, it's either going to increase or decrease the volume. So we need to make sure that we're compensating for that. The easiest way to do that, let's just choose our track here. Where are we? 9 synth 01. Let's just solo that one. All right, and I'm going to just add a little bit top end. Right, let's just see what that sounds like with the effect turned off. All right, so it's ended up louder, right? So all we need to do is play with the gain knob down here. I'm going to just reduce it a little bit. Probably maybe 2 dB-ish. And obviously the sound profile's changed a little bit, so it could be a little bit tricky, but we're just looking for a ballpark, right? We're just making sure that we're giving a listen to what's happened and trying to compensate even a little bit, because even that little change is going to make sure that we're keeping things pretty steady. You know, if I were to add a compressor now, I'm just going to add it pretty aggressively here. All right, so we're getting like -6. So obviously that's going to make a big difference in the volume. Let's listen. Okay, right. So we need to make sure that we increase the volume a little bit. Oops, I'm going to go backwards here. Okay, yeah, so it's about 8 dB to make up for what we've lost, okay? And we do this with everything that we do. Obviously, you don't need to be like super precise. You just need to make sure that you're listening in to anything that's changing, because all of these little changes that you make across the mix are going to add up, and that's how you're going to end up blowing things out. But if you keep things as steady as possible by adjusting the output of everything that you're doing on each track, you're going to make it a lot easier to keep that standard kind of -12 level. All right, let's say that you made a mistake. You've forgotten, you got so excited about the mixing that you forgot to adjust all your volume, and it's going up again. You know, everything is hitting the red, and it just seems like too much effort to fix it at this point. Like, you know, you've spent so much time on it, you know, you just want to get this done, but it's peaking, you know, this is going to be no good to release. So our get out of jail at this point is just to turn down the master fader. Until it gets back to that -12. And then you can print it. It really doesn't matter. As long as it's green here, it doesn't matter if you turn down the master fader. The final volume will be whatever it has in this little box up here, right? So you're going to be peaking at about -10 here. The reason why I don't recommend doing this from the start is because this only has so much headroom itself. You know, if you push it too far, you may get down to here and then you've got nowhere to go. So it's your kind of last resort. If you've got nothing else that you can do that. So it's that simple. The added bonus of keeping tabs on the volume changes that your processing is making is that once you've compensated for it, you also get a better ear about what's actually happening when you are doing your processing without those volume changes fooling you. Thanks as always for watching. If you like this content, please don't forget to hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more like this, please don't forget to subscribe. Check the links in the description for my free resources, which are geared towards helping ambient and experimental artists get the most out of their mixes and masters. You'll find another helpful video about mixing ambient music over here. And until next time, keep making music. Cheers.